All right, we'll call this meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. Roll call.
Councilor Russell?
Present.
Councilor Miller?
Present.
Councilwoman Austin?
Present.
Councilman Wishick?
Here.
Councilman Baum?
All right, will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, up first, under presentations, we have a mass transit discussion. Mr. McGee.
So we've been having some discussions internally about the mass transit initiatives in the central Indiana area. Your battery's probably dead, so I'll get you another one.
Just not hooked or something. All right, don't worry.
Okay. Been very good discussions so if you notice, Indianapolis, the residents of Indianapolis did pass the additional tax in Marion County. Mass transit brings economic development, plain and simply. If you can move your residents to our area and get them easily to downtown Indianapolis to amenities and get them safely home, if you can get workforce here from Marion County who can come up, get starting wage jobs, which we don't want to continue to have $10 to $14 an hour jobs. We want higher wages, but those jobs are going to be here regardless because of where we are. What you do is you put a massive amount of people in one vehicle as opposed to numerous vehicles coming up to our area. So what you need to think of and what the philosophically we need to consider is, and from a policy perspective, is it good public policy to subsidize mass transit? Is it very similar to subsidizing a piece of infrastructure? So it cost about $500,000 to build a quarter mile of road. $500,000. I think they'll tell you a little bit tonight about what the cost of the connector currently is, and then what we need to consider in Boone County especially, which we have not done a very good job of as a whole, as a county as a whole, of what do we do from the public perspective of investing in mass transit. And I will give the floor to Phil.
Thanks, Dax. Good evening. My name is Philip Roth. I'm the mobility manager with the Central Indiana Regional Transportation Authority. We operate the Whitestown Connector and have for the past year and a half or so. With me tonight is Andrew McGee, whom I believe you all know, local Whitestown resident, and Assistant Director for CERTA. He is the director for the Commuter Connect program, another one of CERTA's programs that's shown in your folders there that has a variety of services from carpooling, van pooling, guaranteed ride home programs, etc. I am the program administrator for the 3 workforce connectors that we administer. We've been operating a connector in Plainfield, now called the South Plainfield Connector, for about almost 4 years now. That's called the South Plainfield Connector. Currently has on average about 2,400 trips a month. Beginning in July of last year, we added 2 new connectors. Another connector going to another industrial park in Plainfield, the North Plainfield Connector, and the Whitestown Connector. These services, as Dax mentioned, are geared towards getting workforce, labor force, out to the jobs that are present out here. They pivot off of Indigo's service. That is, they're not meant to be a standalone transportation service, but rather to supplement the service that Indigo already provides. In the case of the Whitestown Connector, we start our run at the Traders Point Shopping Center and run up through the interstate system up to the industrial park where Anson and where Amazon and a number of other industrial tenants are located. We operate this 6 days a week. We generally run from about 5 in the morning till about 9 in the morning, and from about 1:30, 1:40 in the afternoon till about 7:30 in the evening. The intent is to try to maximize the use of the limited resources that we have. We did an analysis last year that this shift schedule accounts for or is able to cover at least one of the 2 trips, either to work or from work, for about 95% of the workforce in the industrial park, and covers both trips for about 80% of the workforce. Now, we do occasionally receive questions about Sunday service. We would love to expand to Sunday service. Currently, the Indigo service to Traders Point is only about 1/3 of the service on a weekday or Saturday. So there's not as much potential to get workers to Traders Point for us to shuttle them up to the industrial park. We judged that was not the highest and best use of resources. Now, with the recent referendum, which still has some hurdles to go before it's final, but if and when that funding starts to come into Indigo, they plan to expand hours of service and days of service. This may well trigger a reconsideration of what our hours and days of service will be. So this is the schedule that we actually operate. You have a copy of this schedule in the brochure that you have in your folder. Now, since we started in July of last year, ridership has been steadily growing, beginning with only a few trips in the first initial weeks. We are currently on track to have close to 1,400 trips this month. Now, to put this in perspective, the South Plainfield service reached this point at a comparable point in its cycle, in its startup, and is now serving in the 2,500 trips per month range. We're noticing in the limited time that this has been operational that ridership is very seasonal because the employment base in the industrial park is very seasonal. We're starting to see an uptick in the ridership right now. We're hoping that every time we raise the ridership, the peak doesn't come down quite as much, and we continue that upward track. The system is funded primarily from a demonstration grant from the Federal Transit Administration. 80% of it comes from Federal Transit Administration. The remaining 20% is being funded by Amazon. We do have some fare revenues that we collect that are able to defray some of the costs. Generally, in rough terms, the service costs around $230,000 per year. Our estimate is that the funds we have from this grant and the commitment from Amazon will suffice to continue service through at least the end of 2018, if not through the beginning of 2019. At that point, we're going to need to have an assessment of whether we judge the connector to be a success, whether we want it to continue, and how it will continue. Just as a point of comparison, the South Plainfield connector is undergoing this kind of assessment right now. This is the connector that's been in operation for 4 years. And right now, we're hoping that a coalition of businesses is going to be able to voluntarily contribute funds into a pool to maintain that service once the federal funds stop. There are a variety of options that we can consider. I'm not here tonight to talk about those, but rather to give you an orientation to the service. Still, this is a future issue that at some point we would like to address. I'd also want to note that we currently have a grant in place for a supplemental route. You all know of the additional industrial development taking place on Indianapolis Boulevard, spec buildings going up, warehouses, tenants coming in. There have been an increasing number of questions asked for expanding the service that we offer to this area. We're in the midst of deliberations whether we can accommodate those areas with our existing Whitestown Connector service, but we do have coming in 2019 a grant from the Indianapolis Metropolitan Planning Organization that would allow us, if we deemed it necessary, to start a new service, again connecting from Traders Point. As a way of educating population about our connectors, we developed a brief video that shows all 3 connectors that we currently have operational. So it's only about 3 or 4 minutes. I think that's right, 3 or 4 minutes. So with your permission, I'm going to go ahead and play that, and then I can answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Central Indiana Regional Transportation Authority, which we call CERTA, started getting phone calls at our office on a fairly regular basis from people who were telling us they had a job offer, but they couldn't get there.
We have like 28,500 jobs now in Plainfield. Our labor market is stretched to the point we have to look beyond Plainfield.
So we identified a federal grant. These grants require a 20% match. And the town of Plainfield was willing to put that match up.
Currently, because the unemployment is so low, the available resources to be able to staff our building has become difficult. So we've combined with my peers and other organizations have gotten together. We've met, we've talked about our challenges, retention, hiring. It was an interesting conversation from the perspective of we all had the same issue.
My name is Roger. I work at LKQ and I'm a forklift operator. I've been riding it for about 3 months now. The bus, as soon as I get off the metro, it's sitting right there. I just walk right across the street to it, and it rides out here to LKQ. It's right at the end of the driveway here.
I think there's people that today have the challenge of being able to just get to a place of employment.
I wouldn't be able to get here at all because I'm currently not in possession of an automobile. I would just have to find work somewhere else. I mean, it's already hard to find work.
As our business grows in this facility, our need for people is going to grow. And that means the connector becomes even more valuable to us.
This is a 3-year grant, and we have been working with the town of Plainfield as well as local leaders to identify a sustainable source of funding into the future.
Without the connector bus, I would not be able to maintain employment out here in Plainfield.
Just following up on 1 or 2 of the points that the video makes. The number of steps required for a commuter to get to a job site in either Whitestown or Plainfield is rather extensive. In addition to a 40-minute bus trip from downtown Indianapolis, the main transit hub, to either Traders Point in the case of the Whitestown connector or the Plainfield transfer point. Then adding on top of that, however long it took them to get to the downtown transit center, usually from some other bus connection in Indianapolis. Then on the other end, the connectors themselves, which either take 30 to 45 minutes depending upon where you're working. It's not uncommon for these workers to have journey to work of 90 minutes to 2 hours in each direction. So the people who are doing this really do want to work. They're very committed to trying to find employment. The gentleman in the video talks about how he would not be able to work. These are primarily transit-dependent people for a variety of reasons. Either they can't afford a car, or the car that their family has is being used for other purposes, or they're not capable of driving for some physical limitation reason. So the service has, we get calls all the time about how people appreciate the service and its availability. And I'm pleased that we're able to offer it here in Whitestown. I'll shut up there and just see what kind of questions you have and see what I can answer for you.
On the Whitestown route, has there been any demand from the commercial businesses down here on Whitestown Parkway for a stop there?
I have not fielded any calls like that. I have not heard of any calls, no. When we do a reconsideration of the route, probably sometime next year, we'll have a public meeting, and we'll invite people to come and ask us how well they think the route is working.
A lot of the restaurants here are employing people that
Yeah.
would have difficulty in that down here on the corridor.
Are they having difficulty? They're having difficulty getting workforce out there? Okay. That's good to know.
Okay.
Susan, Jeff? Any questions?
Is it, what I saw was the riders are only gonna pay for $10,000 of the $230,000, so that really doesn't cover anything. So,
It's typical for a transit agency only to recover a portion of their costs through fares. Indigo system-wide recovers a little less than 25% of its operating costs from fares. And it's higher than that on some routes, it's lower than that on others. Our South Plainfield connector recovers about 25% in fares. So if ridership were to go up, we could conceivably get a higher amount of fares, but it's unlikely that we'll ever have a self-sustaining transportation service. And the only transit service in the country that really is self-sustaining in that sense is New York City. So.
thank you.
Anything else?
Well, thank you all for the opportunity.
I think like what Kevin was referring to is we add hotels and other facilities into the mix up here. We're going to need a way to bring in additional populace to help work in the facilities that we bring in. I know that, with the uptick of, you're seeing additional leasing efforts out of Whitestown Crossing, and then that was, suggested at future dates, a hotel up there and some other things. I think this is something that should be considered, and if we want to have a thriving community, we have to have our businesses working and being open, and I think that we're gonna need to look at supporting something like this.
So from Mr. Russell and from your comments, looking at expanding beyond the industrial park and seeing beyond the warehousing, manufacturing, but more into the hospitality side of things as well. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Congratulations.
All right. I guess before we go to the next step, do we have any changes to tonight's agenda? No? All right.
Make the motion, we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion, it's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, motion's adopted 4-0. All right, we will move on to the clerk treasurer report. Any questions on those reports? Okay. Move on to department reports. Any questions on any of the reports that were submitted? You got something, Dax?
Do you have anything? Okay.
All right. We will move on to the public request to speak. Did we have anybody sign up to speak tonight on any non-agenda item? All right. Is there anybody who would like to speak on a non-agenda item? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 6, approval of the consent agenda.
I would make a motion that we approve the consent agenda. Item A, approval of meeting minutes from October 12th, 2016 and October 27th, 2016 meeting minutes. And B, claims, expenses town, revenues town, and utility claims, which include water operating, wastewater operating.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion that's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Consent agenda is adopted 4-0. All right, moving on to unfinished business. Letter A, we have the RFP for town solid waste services.
This was on your agenda last month, and there were some red lines for us to look at, questions to answer. The reason why I put it on your agenda again was I received no emails about any of those red lines or questions. Those are really for you. Those are basically coming from staff to the council of what we want to put out there. So I just wanted to put it on the agenda to once again remind us that we'd like to get this out to solid waste companies so that they can start to make decisions, get us information back, and we can make a decision on this come January or February. So no necessarily a decision. I know I said consider as opposed to discuss, but for us, the legal team has done a good job of putting this RFP together, and there are just some additional questions in there that I guess staff could probably make the decision, but this is a big decision because this is solid waste removal for the town as a whole and something that we've never done before. So I want to make sure we get it correct. So I gave you another copy. You have it electronically. It's on your agenda. What I'd like to do is, in the next couple weeks, get answers back to us as staff so we can get it to legal so we can complete the RFP. You can approve the RFP in December. We can get it out. That puts us in mid-January, and hopefully decisions can be made sometime around the February town council meeting.
All right. Will you send us all reminders?
I will do so. I will do so.
If you don't start hearing from us so that we can deal
And
with this.
it was, with other items, it was kind of on the back burner. So I just wanted to make sure we brought it back up. And I've had a lot of emails from people. I pay this, and I pay this, and I pay this. And there's an opportunity here for us to get 2 or 3 different services that we don't already have, which I think is advantageous, especially for those people that aren't in an HOA or aren't in a traditional neighborhood like in the Legacy Core, some of our more rural areas, to have an opportunity to have costly solid waste removal services. So I will remind you.
Thank you. All right, up next we have, under new business, letter A, we have a public hearing on ordinance 2016-44, an ordinance approving an additional appropriation of $90,000. And at this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing. So if anybody would like to make comments on the additional appropriation ordinance, please speak now.
make the motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion that's been seconded to close. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All right. Public hearing is closed. Now,
Okay. Ordinance number 2016-44, additional appropriation ordinance. Whereas it's been determined that it's now necessary to appropriate more money than was appropriated in the annual budget, now therefore be it resolved that the council of the Whitestown Civil Town, Boone County, that for the expenses of the taxing unit, the following additional sums of money are hereby appropriated out of the funds named and for the purposes specified, subject to the laws governing the same. From the general fund, we're requesting other services and charges of $90,000 and appropriating $90,000. So the total for the general fund, and this would be adopted the 16th day of November 2016. Mr. President, I make a motion we adopt additional appropriation ordinance number 2016-44.
hey, do we need to suspend the rules?
Okay. Mr. President, I make a motion we suspend the rules and have second reading of ordinance 2016-44.
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion that's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Rules are suspended.
Additional appropriation ordinance number 2016-44. Once again, Mr. President, making recommendation we adopt ordinance approving an additional appropriation ordinance 2016-44.
I would make the motion that we adopt it.
Hold on, we already got a motion.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just needs a second.
My hearing aids are messing up. I'll second.
All right, so we've got a motion and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ordinance is adopted 4-0. Up next, we have letter B under new business. Consider approval of the fire board's favorable recommendation to allow the Whitestown Fire Department to purchase a, what's that acronym stand for? You gotta remind me.
Self-contained breathing apparatus.
There we go.
Our
Fit
air
testing
mask.
machine.
Long story short on the background, this year we put in for a federal grant to purchase this machine. Unfortunately, we were not awarded the grant. We're afforded an opportunity with some extra remaining money in our capital outlays budget this year. I think this would be a great purchase for us. Currently, we've been renting a machine in addition to borrowing a machine every time we need to fit test somebody. We fit test for the seal of the mask as required by OSHA on an annual basis and also on initial hire. So there's about 3 weeks out of the year that we have to rent a machine for $600 each time. Basically, the average lifespan of this machine is 10 years. So really, for the same amount of money, plus the added convenience of buying, if we purchase this machine, it'd be extremely beneficial.
Is it going to require one of our people to be trained to use it?
We have 3 people already trained to use it. It's nothing in depth as far as training. It's just operating the software. The machine basically runs itself.
I would make the motion that we approve the purchase. We have more firefighters coming on board. He's gonna have even more and more need for this.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. We've got a motion and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion's adopted 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Chief.
you.
All right. Up next, we have a discussion of the 2017 budget with the public safety local income tax.
Yes, so budget's been passed, gone through all the proper channels, had the proper public hearings. What was not included in our budget was the local option income tax for public safety. And what I mean by not included, it was not put it on the gateway because we didn't know it was going to pass, so we didn't want to prematurely place it in there. What you will now do is on January meeting, you will pass an additional appropriation, appropriating that money into the budget, essentially. It'll be placed into a line. The reason why it's on your agenda tonight is that I sent this out to you, and you'll see a column in that budget that does discuss the spending from the 1.7 estimated $1 million that we'll receive specifically from that 0.5 for the public safety income tax, okay? So, what we need to consider from now to December, prior to making the additional appropriation, is how are we going to manage the spending that comes out of that line, since it's going to be one lump sum line for this year until we change it for 2018. And so what I mean by that is you have a request from the police department for a certain amount of money, and you have a request from the fire department for a certain amount of money. I believe the fire department's around $808,000. Police department's around $900,000, $916,000, that they would essentially be, the lines, as you see in that column, are the exact same line or the exact same budget line as they are in the regular budget. We just wanted to split this out to show you where the 1.7 million would go. What's going to happen is these two public safety agencies are going to start spending money, especially on personnel. And Josh is going to want to make sure that he has the money that he's budgeted for personnel, and Dennis is going to make sure that he has the money that he's budgeted for personnel. So what I mean by administration, or what I mean by organization, if you will, of this particular sum of money is, you know, the majority of their budgets still come out of the regular budget. They still come out of the general budget, general COIT, the general certified shares. They have some additional money coming out of this lit that will help with their increases for 2017. So how are we going to manage that with the clerk treasurer, with invoicing, with how we take it out, how we manage it, how we monitor it, is what I wanted you to see. Also, you all haven't necessarily had an opportunity to say, well, fire chief and department have requested this, and police chief and police department have requested this. I haven't really heard it from you all if we're okay to move forward with this. I think we've had great internal conversations about how this is going to work, and I think we've done a very good job of making it organized for the public to understand, and for the departments to understand about how this is going to work, and for those that helped pass it to understand how Whitestown's appropriation of this money is going to work. But we need just to have an organized, unified front of how we spend it and how we record that, how we record these expenditures out of this particular line when you make that one lump sum additional appropriation in January. And that's why I have it on the agenda tonight. Also, it's kind of on the agenda to keep it in the public eye. Budget's on the website under our transparency portal, under 2017 budget. It's been in front of the public since August, which I think we've done a very good job of putting the budget in front of the public.
Reader's Digest condensed version. How many extra personnel for each department?
I believe 8 for the fire department, 6 for the fire department, 6 for the police department.
Is that going to be sufficient? I know, that's a dangerous question, but
It's a trick question.
is that going to be sufficient? Is that going to, for your needs?
Josh?
Chief,
The 6 people we had proposed to hire would be 3 firefighters and 3 civilian medics. The reason we've done the split is we want to ensure that we continue to have ALS coverage each shift that we have. So basically 24/7, each day, every day. The 3 firefighters will get us a step in the right direction as to a little less reliant on part-time staff. Honestly, 6 firefighters would be ideal, to where we could have each day 2 ladder companies and an engine company and the ambulance respond.
So it's a step in the right direction, but we're probably going to have
Correct. We will still have to, basically what it boils down to is the ladder and engine at Station 71, depending on what type of call and where the call is located, will either respond the ladder or will respond the engine. we won't be able to do them both at the same time.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Chief Anderson?
All 6 of our positions will be public safety officer positions to help support that role. We currently have 4 that are training for full-time officers that are training to get their PSO certification. That will happen on or about the 15th of December. That'll take us up to a total 23 count within the agency between both full-time and reserve officers. This will also give us another staffing of officers on each of the assigned shifts, A days, A nights, B days, B nights, to start working towards my 20-year plan that I put before the council back during the summer. So the passage of the lit, in essence, has speeded up that process to now what was going to be a 5-year plan, and realistically can happen within about a 2 to 2.5 year time frame.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. I was gonna do the math, but are you still planning on increasing the salaries or adjusting?
Would
the
like to get our
salaries?
baseline salary for first class to be at that 55 level. That makes us then competitive with Zionsville, Westfield, Carmel, Fishers.
Right, and I think that's a good thing. I've had a few people already asking me what we're doing, and I don't wanna tell them yet.
We hadn't formally put that out there. It'd been informal through the agency and through the selection process. This is the second selection process we've done this year. The first time, we had about 28 people apply at the very first of the year. When we went for this process in preparation for these 6, we had 119. So the pool has gotten extremely bigger. The competition's got extremely more strenuous. So we're going to get, I think, some really good candidates out of this.
It's a little more